I was listening to Tara Brock, the spiritual teacher, and she said something that really resonated with me. She said, "May I find some refuge and find some way to love this life no matter what." And it just stuck with me. Like, this is a really, really crappy time in my life, but is there some way I can enjoy my life and find a way to love my life?
Here's something we don't talk about enough in the recovery space. What if the path forward isn't just about symptom tracking or pacing or calming down your threat response, but what if it's about finding joy again? And before you roll your eyes, hear this. So, joy is one of the most powerful nervous system regulators that we have, and it's been right here under our noses all along. If you're new here, I'm Raelan Agle, and I talk to people who've walked the hard road and found their way to the other side so that we can learn from these people what actually works. Because recovery from complex conditions isn't a guessing game anymore. And as a community, we have learned so much. And today's incredible guest is Leela O'Brien from Boulder, Colorado. Before long COVID, Leela was a scientist, aerospace engineer, and an outdoor athlete who thrived on challenge, rock climbing, skiing, running. But when long COVID hit, she lost the ability to walk and most of the use of her hands, among other symptoms. And she even had to step away from her dream job working on a NASA mission. And yet, Leela found a way forward, not by pushing harder, but by doing the opposite. She got quiet, she got curious, she found joy, and that shift brought her back to work, back to movement, and back to life and into a completely new way of being. She's here to share with you how you can potentially do the same. And before we dive in, I'd like to thank Brain Retraining 101 for sponsoring this video. Brain Retraining 101 is our MECFS and Long COVID recovery program that gives you all the information and tools that you need in one place, combined with multiple weekly group check in calls with our amazing program coaches. The supportive community that you will find there is truly where the magic happens. It's a one time purchase, giving you lifetime access and weekly support, including calls with me. So if you feel like this is your right next step, you can check out the program right now for free with the link in the video description. And if you join, I look forward to meeting you. Now, let's dive into our interview with Leela. Leela, amazing to have you here today. Thank you for doing
Thank you so
this.
much for having me here, Raylan.
So you have such an interesting story and have been on such an incredible journey. So I always, leave it to people where they want to start with this. But take us back. How did this start for you?
Yeah. So I guess what's an important part of my story, and probably a lot of people's stories, who are dealing with long COVID or ME/CFS, is even prior to getting sick, I was, pretty much living in a state of fight or flight for the a whole year prior to getting ill. And I've, like a lot of people with long COVID, I was very much a high achiever, like always focus on my successes, my accomplishments, my career. I had gotten a PhD in space physics, and then I was working as an engineer on a NASA space mission. So I had a lot of pressure on me, and I was just, yeah, my life was about my accomplishments. And I was also like a high performance outdoor athlete with rock and ice climbing. So that's another kind of realm where a lot of the focus is on your performance and your success and, what you can do. And so I think that this way of life was like really hard on me. I was just always putting a lot of pressure on myself and feeling like I was never good enough. And eventually I got really burnt out. Like it was bad. I used to be able to just be hyper focused. I could do anything. Like I could just spend hours at work working on a task. But I got to this point where I was unable to like get any work done at all. Like I would just stare at my computer screen and like nothing. I wouldn't be able to do a single thing. I was just like in this like paralyzed state. And that went on for quite a while. And I could feel like my health breaking down slowly over time, but I didn't know what to do about it because, especially in the world of engineering and science, no one really talks about burnout. It's, the whole motto is like push
Yeah.
through. And it was so it was a challenging thing to deal with, and I think it I had to get long COVID to get out of that, unfortunately. My body eventually told me, like, "No, you're going to take a break. We're gonna force you into it." At least so that's kind of how I see
Yeah.
that journey, and I think in March of 2020, I, contracted COVID, and I was, I guess, one of the earlier cases, and, like, about 3 months later, I started getting a bunch of, like, really weird neurological symptoms. Um, like, the worst of the symptoms were impaired motor function. So, like, I got a really bad tremor, muscle weakness. It was like my brain wasn't communicating with my muscles properly, and I was just struggling to walk, use my hands, and this all came on like pretty rapidly. It was really crazy. And
Wow.
then, yeah, affected me cognitively as well. I got, the brain fog, which is, signature long COVID symptom, was struggling to focus on my work. I mean, I couldn't really focus on anything for more than about 20 minutes. Trouble with just even processing information and just getting a lot of fatigue after using my brain. And like I know a lot of other people with long COVID get, I had the issues with the word recall. Like I just couldn't remember words. And, it's pretty embarrassing because you're in a conversation and you're just like, um, sorry, I can't think of the word. So yeah, those were like how I was mostly affected. But yeah, I had the draining fatigue, and then just a lot of other weird symptoms like rashes, like issues with my vision, blurry vision, temperature regulation issues. So it's like the funny thing with long COVID, it's like a lot of times it's just such a grab bag of symptoms and it looks kind of different for everyone, which is interesting and, makes it really, really tough to diagnose. And that was a really challenging part of it for me getting a diagnosis. I I mean, I was unable to work. I could barely walk. Most of the time I'm like bedbound and
Yeah.
I didn't have a diagnosis to give to my work, so I couldn't go on medical leave for that reason. And it was so challenging. I just exhausted all of my vacation time because I've been saving up a lot of vacation time and just kept going to the doctors. Like they couldn't find anything wrong with me other than, I did have an abnormal EMG, which showed, that I did have some sort of neuromuscular thing going on. And then they diagnosed me with, they called it essential tremor. But later on, they kind of decided it was like from COVID, not essential tremor. But it was, yeah, such a wild ride, like going through experiencing this, especially in the early stages of it, like in May of 2020, when I don't think long COVID had, there wasn't a lot of research in it yet. I mean, there still isn't,
Mhm.
but being one of the earlier cases, it was really challenging trying to figure out what was going on and yeah, how to like keep my job. I eventually left my job because I couldn't keep doing it. And there was this part of me that also knew I just needed to take time to really let myself recover and just focus on taking care of myself because, I kept putting pressure on myself to still do my job. At the time I was working on a NASA space mission and, there's not a lot of room for error with those big
Yeah.
projects. Um, and yeah, I hope that within the group of the audience here that there are some people with long COVID that manifests as motor function disorder because it's a scary road to go down since the symptoms really mimic. a lot of other disorders, and that can be scary. They can mimic like MS and even ALS. Like my symptoms were very much like ALS. I was having progressive loss of motor function and, the kind of signature muscle twitches you get with ALS. So that was pretty terrifying. And, I just want to reach that group of people and let them know like just
Yeah.
because you have these symptoms doesn't mean it's ALS. And you can, you can get better because I do know how scary it is. And, the doctors are just ruling out all these different diseases and illnesses. And, then you go to the worst case scenario in your mind of what it could be. So, yeah.
Especially in May of 2020, I don't think I'd even heard of long COVID. And I was already working somewhat in this space that just wasn't, it hadn't been around long enough for many of us to even know that that was a thing, aside from the people who going through it were like, yes, this is a thing. But it's challenging now. So I can't even begin to imagine what that was like back then.
Yeah. Yeah. At least there's more awareness now. Like I'll
Yeah.
bring it up and people have heard of it. But back then it
Yeah.
was like, I have no idea what's going on. Like, what is this all out of
Yeah.
nowhere? I thought it was MS and they rule out MS. And you're like, okay, well, what could it be then?
Yeah, and we've come a long way. And this is why recovery stories and people doing what you do is so important because it gets the information out there. Because there are still so many people that are in long waits to go to long COVID specialty clinics. And then they get there and they're still not told that there's really anything that can be done. And, many doctors still understandably don't have that information because it takes, and we're still all just figuring it out. And we don't know if it's, it's probably not the same thing happening for all, however, hundreds of millions of people out there that have it. But so many people are recovering. So at least now we have options, we have resources, there are different paths. It's not this big unknown. They're like, long what? What are you talking about? Yeah. And I had to, I was looking every week, I look at the interviews that I'm doing ahead and believe it or not, or probably believe it, but you are not the first athlete with a PhD in physics that I've interviewed this week. And I was saying to my husband, I said, it's rarely people I'm talking to that are like, yeah, I just, I just kind of like lay around and don't stress much, smoke weed all day, been out of work. And then I got CFS. I'm not saying it doesn't happen to all sorts of people. And initially, that was quite validating for me because I used to think that people thought that I was just lazy and that, or somehow I just didn't want to get better, or I must be exaggerating this, or it must be in my head. So I'm like, look at all these people. These are clearly not the type of people that would just choose to put their lives on hold. But then it's also alarming because we've normalized in our society, in many societies, this way of living that leads to this, where we feel we can't have any limits, when we have so much stress, when we have put so many demands on ourselves and so many expectations, that we have all of these people trying to do all these things and then like going 100 miles an hour, and then it's like running into a brick wall. Suddenly everything just stops.
Yeah. I really hope this really brings that to the forefront because there have been so many people who were, high achievers, really high performance, like the kind of people who put a lot of pressure on themselves. Like that is majority of the
Yeah.
people getting not only long COVID, but yeah, like ME, CFS, and a lot of chronic illnesses. And I think as we come
Yeah.
together and talk more about it, we can make that connection. And I hope collectively our world can see that this is damaging, this way of life, this kind of pressure we put on ourselves. And
Yeah.
it's a big part of the message I'm trying to put into the world now and live by as well. Like it's not worth it. It's not,
Yeah.
if we don't take care of ourselves and listen to our bodies when they give signs in the beginning, we could end up, yeah, with a chronic illness.
Yeah, and some people say, "Oh, this high achiever, aspect doesn't resonate for me," but it can look like lots of different things in the way we live our lives. Like some people are just very isolated. We've lost our sense of community, and there's a loneliness to it and a depression, or there can be a lot of anxiety put on people, and it's just you're in a people pleasing kind of high alert mode all the time. But it's just a bunch of things showing that the way we're living our life isn't really in alignment with the way that we are meant to be living it, and our bodies are just like, wow, alarms, alarms.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what did this look like for you, especially starting so early or like so many years back? How did you start to figure out? Did you go down that usual path of trying a bunch of sort of bizarre things, or what happened
I
next?
so I kind of did, not as much as I know a lot of other people have. Like, I would say I did go see, a naturopathic doctor, so tried a bunch of, like, supplements, I don't even
Mm,
know, like, just interesting tincture things, and, because I guess in the beginning I was kind of looking for a more, like, medicine to take to,
yeah.
get better. I
Yeah.
I didn't rely much
Yeah.
on Western medicine because they were just telling me we don't have anything for you. Like, we can give you a drug for your tremor, but that's about it. And, by the way, this drug is going to like slow down your heart rate. So, like, so I'm like, well, I'll rather just have the tremor than this drug that's, making me unable to, like, it affects your breathing. Yeah, so yeah, I didn't really I was pretty quick to kind of walk away from Western medicine, which is kind of sad, but they just weren't trying to help me. Um, and yeah, so tried the naturopathic approach. That wasn't really helping either. And I think initially I did kind of dive into meditation. It was something that just
Mm,
intuitively seemed like I think this could help me. And so I started off like, and I'm sure you've mentioned him on this before, but doing Joe Dispenza meditations and
mm,
really, trying to make peace with my situation and, you know, approach healing from that aspect. But yeah, I kind of quickly just took my own journey with it, which I think is pretty cool. Like, I didn't exactly follow anyone's protocol. It I just kind of found my own way with it. And it was, I mean, a really profound experience, even beyond my long COVID journey. I remember just being stuck in bed thinking like life is just passing me by and I feel awful and I can't really do anything, but I just need to still find a way to like enjoy my life. Like, I can't live like this forever. And I think, yeah, like a turning point for me was I was listening to Tara Brock, the spiritual teacher, and she said something that really resonated with me. She said, like something like, may I find some refuge and find some way to love this life no matter what. And it just stuck with me. Like, this is a really, really crappy time in my life, but is there some way I can enjoy my life and find a way to love my life? And from that point on, like, I was kind of focusing on just finding little joys in my day, as simple as it was, like drinking a cup of tea and listening to music and just really being present. And I found myself like actually finding some peace in the stillness because, I was always so go, 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 like on overdrive. Like, it was this, I started seeing it as, yeah, like I didn't see long COVID as a gift, but I'm like, okay, this is a gift that I can slow down right now. Like, what can I do with this? And an interesting thing that I think could, resonate with other people as well is, especially, yeah, people who had a very like busy life before getting sick,
mm,
is I was able to just kind of like tap into this sense of freedom because I wasn't working. I wasn't I couldn't do my physical activities. And I was like, wow, I am just free to like explore my mind and my ideas and my life. Just, not much is going on in it right now, but I can just really explore it freely right now because I don't have any, goal I need to achieve. There's nothing I'm trying to accomplish.
mm,
And yeah, it led me down this really beautiful path of just every day I was um kind of just exploring like my imagination. I was just sit outside and stare at the trees and just really like get curious about things I didn't really think of on a daily basis because I didn't have the time for it or I didn't make the time for it, and really just becoming like enchanted by life again. I know it sounds silly maybe, but it just was such a beautiful way of living life in such a difficult time. And I didn't know it at the time, but I was what I now call is like wiring my brain for habitual creative thinking. Like I was opening my mind again to think in ways I hadn't been thinking and experiencing life in ways I hadn't done in my adult life, like probably not since I was a child. And yeah, it was a really so it, that experience kind of like unfolded in an interesting way um in how I like started easing back into activity as well. So like what was happening was I realized when I was like in this like hyper creative state, and I didn't even need to be doing a lot of things, but just, a lot of times it was just like going into my imagination or listening to music or just being kind of playful and silly. I found that I was getting more energy. Like I was like, oh, I feel really energized when I'm like in this creative state. And then even with like very mundane tasks, I would find my motor function was like getting a little bit better. I'm like, oh, this is really interesting. So at that point, I decided to go into I wanted to try and ease back in activity with this approach. And I was like, okay, I'm going to try walking. Try I mean, I could walk a little, but like try walking outside, go for a proper walk. And it was interesting because I approached it from this like place of just being really like curious and exploratory and just having fun with it. Like, okay, like, let's see what I can do. Like, I wasn't putting pressure on myself. I was just like, okay, let's try and walk. Let's see like how I can make this happen. And the more I did it, I would like struggle and it was like trial and error. But I found I was like tapping into like parts of my brain, that like I think, creating new like neural networks to get the body, the muscles to engage in the way they used to. Or, maybe I'm tapping, like building, engaging different muscles, but they kind of like take over for, the ones that are, you know, struggling with, the brain connections. Because I think the issue I was having was like, yeah, communication like breakdown between the the brain and the muscles. But yeah, it was really interesting to see like when I was just like really hyper like focused and just and just intrigued by moving. Like I would get so excited thinking, oh, I'm walking now. I know it sounds like silly, but it's like this is happening. I was so excited. Like I was in the beginning just so upset I like couldn't walk and couldn't like do my activities, but now it's like any little win was like huge. Um and so yeah, I took this approach just over time, just trial and error, being creative with it, just exploring like what works, what didn't. And I was learning how to adapt. And I think I really needed that kind of fun, playful, exploratory mindset to do that because it really just opened up my mind and I think allowed me, like I said, to tap into that neuroplasticity. I know other people on the channel have talked about it. It's just a different way of tapping into that neuroplasticity. Um, and in my opinion, a really fun a fun way because I was enjoying it and I was eventually able to start running again. That was hard. I was tripping and falling like all over the place and, I was still getting frustrated. I'm human. like I would just get back up and be like, okay, what can I try now? Maybe if I like use my muscles a little differently or like, you know, even just kind of trying to access that flow state where I just let the body let that, the mind body connection kind of figure it out
Mhm.
without me even trying to like mess with it too much. I know in climbing we call it like a flow state when you're just like executing movement just so beautifully and you're not really in your head about it. You're just kind of, I think, tapping into, I think, more intuition and instinctual movement. So it was that kind of experience. So yeah, I eventually was able to like adapt my running to be able to do that again without tripping as much. So while I was doing that, I was building my muscles back, and then I was able to get back into rock climbing, which was also really tough in the beginning. My Because my hands were just really weak. I had just lost a lot of fine motor function, and you know, um, difficulty with balance, and just like a lot of muscle strength just gone. But I just like kept at it and not even from a place of persistence. It was just a place of like loving what I was doing and enjoying it and just being having fun with the creative process of figuring it out. And I think that was just really instrumental in my adaptability, my return to activity, and led to a lot of my recovery. And I took the same approach cognitively. Like I didn't just try and dive into work or like researching or studying or thinking about things I didn't enjoy. I like started with things that like lit me up, things that really excited me. And the more I did that, the more I could handle like cognitively, and I was able to like build that up. And it was the same with just getting more energy from, all the fatigue. I found like, oh, when I'm doing these things that like make me happy, they light me up, I'm all of a sudden I have energy. Before, like 20 minutes prior, I would say, oh, I just don't have the energy to do this. And then I would do something that I really am intrigued by. And okay, all of a sudden I have the energy to do it. And at first I was like, oh gosh, am I like making this up? Like, is this fake? Is this never a real thing? But I just think it's like being creative is very energizing and healing. So, yeah, it's an unconventional but like interesting approach. And, like to kind of, I guess, connect it with, some of the other people you've talked to and what they've, like all the wonderful insights they've brought, because there's so many different strategies to use for recovery. And there's the brain training and somatic practices, and like processing trauma, and it's
Mhm.
all so important. But I look at this as a form of the brain training, but instead of being so like regimented, it's like kind of like open, fun, like Wild West, kind of strategy. And just be open and see where it goes. Be exploratory and don't be so focused on where it's going to take you, but just see what can happen and trust in it.
Yeah, and more, I wouldn't even say it's all that unconventional, thankfully, because I hear more and more people, whether it's just people talking about their own recovery journey or it's the experts, leading the way with the research in this field, like Alan Gordon, who runs the pain reprocessing therapy in Los Angeles. He talks about in his book, The Way Out, he says, like one of the best things you can do for your recovery is stop trying to recover and figure out what's going to bring you some joy during the day. And even like I have a recovery program, Brain Retraining 101, and we talk about joy all the time. It's in the first lesson because, and it sounds silly, like you say, and I get it, but the science is showing us that the fastest way you can signal to your nervous system that everything is okay is by doing something you love. You don't stop to smell the flowers when you're being chased by a bear. And also, we know our brain is in a more neuroplastic state. Like it forms those new connections more quickly when you're in a calm, relaxed state versus a like, I must fix myself. So yeah, there are tools that you can use in the moments or when symptoms come up and somatic tracking and all of that. But more and more, what I'm hearing is exactly what you're saying is that it's and it does sound silly and too simple, but start living again. Find little pieces of joy. Make your joy list every week. And it might feel like, but all the things that bring me joy, so many of them I can't do. And that might be true for now. But I've interviewed people that have said that were bedbound and they said, well, I found ways to really enjoy eating my food or to like put a bird feeder outside my window and watch the birds. Or I got my husband to wallpaper one wall with like nature scenes because the nature made me so happy. Or I could only spend 2 minutes or 5 minutes with my children a day. But I just like squeezed every ounce of joy. And the more people focused on this, Like, the bigger their joy list got, all of a sudden there's more and more they can do, and those things that they're trying to get back to, they were getting closer and closer to, which is insane. And if someone had said this to me when I'd first become unwell and was, lost my job and my whole life, and they're like, "You just need to have some more joy." What are you talking about? I've got a real condition here. That is not a real answer.
What a great prescription though, right?
But
So I look at it, I was
yeah,
like, "Oh, this is the
you
best. This is good
yes.
news," you know? And yeah, that's great. I love that
Yeah.
more people are leaning into that and, people are doing more
Yeah.
research on it because yeah, I mean, it was so transformative for me, like at a level where I was like, "Whoa, this is
Yeah.
powerful." And yeah, you're right. You don't need to be able to do a lot to find that joy. I mean, in the beginning for me, it was very simple things like yeah, like my cup of tea, looking out the window at the trees, like like listening to music. You start small and then you can keep building up. And I think even like more than even the joy piece is that like curiosity piece. I think it really opens the
Mhm.
mind to also reach that
I like
neuroplastic
that.
state. Like I remember, just sitting in a chair, like looking at a lamp shade and thinking like all these questions about the lampshade, like, so many random things that I've never thought about when I look at a lamp. And it can be so simple. And part of, my practice and what I, teach my clients is you have to make it a habit, but not in a like not fun way. It's just
Yeah.
being in your natural curious state. Like not getting curious about your illness, getting curious about life and just your surroundings. You might be stuck at home, but I'm sure you could really entertain yourself for a long time just if you really allow yourself to explore that and really get curious about everything around you. And I think that's what like leads to exercising creativity because then once you're curious, then you start kind of opening those portals in your mind. You might start like imagining more, or maybe you're like listening to music and you're picturing yourself dancing to it, or even just seeing like visuals of the music notes. Like you can be really tired lying in bed and being creative. It doesn't have to be you physically creating something. You don't need to be, yeah, making art or you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I found when I just did that all day long, like, or not all day long, but when I did that a lot throughout the day, it kind of just became
Mhm.
habit. Now I just am always thinking in this creative space. And I think it's yeah, like really helpful in the beginning stages to just do it in very simple ways. And I always so I say like with I've grouped this all these practices into what I call the explorer mindset. And it's the practicing of daily like curiosity, creativity, but also I say courage because I think we also have to start, edging if we want to like recover, we kind of need to edge into what we can do because I know a lot of times we're
Mhm.
afraid that if we push too hard, we'll have a big setback. I had a client who was really worried about this and I said, "Your body's wisdom and intuition, trust in that. Trust that you can figure out how to edge into your, past your limitations a little, but not overdo it." And we're human, we're going to overdo it, but it's not the end of the world. Usually, we'll have setbacks. Sometimes, some of my setbacks have been a while, but overall, I saw myself trending toward more and more toward recovery the more I was like edging into what I could do. And I think I had an open mind about it. Like I was thinking, well, let me see if this is possible. Let me like try a little more to see what I can handle. Okay, this might feel like I'm, could get injured or, have like a health crisis. So, maybe I dial it back a little. But, with this illness, we get really good at just listening to our body and understanding what it needs. And I think we have to trust in that knowing and trust that we can, edge in a little bit to keep that momentum going towards recovery. And that's where I feel like, yeah, that courage piece comes in, to not be so afraid of a setback or what might happen, but just to trust in the process and, explore what's possible, not hold ourselves back and, oh, well, I couldn't do that last week. There's no way I could do it this week. How do you know? You won't be able to like make those neural connections that can allow you to do it if you have that mindset where you don't think it's possible. And then like the last piece of like the my process is connection. I think connection is just such a critical part of this creative and recovery journey, like connection to ourselves, who we are, like our values and what we want out of life, what lights us up, what excites us, connection to the world, to nature, and connection to other people. So like making time for our relationships and community, because I know when we're really sick we feel like, oh, I don't have the time or energy for this, but it's so nurturing and healing. And I mean, I'm thinking I had a client who was interesting. She has long COVID and she was not able to walk very far, and she definitely could not walk upstairs, but she spent time with her family after, I encouraged her. I said, go on this family trip. I know you can do it. I believe
Mhm.
in you. And I know you believe in yourself. Go on this family trip and spend time with your family. And she like told me later, she's like, you won't believe it. I walked up the stairs. I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. And she's like, yeah, I was just hanging out with my family, having a good time, like connecting with them. And I was one, I think she was distracted from her long COVID. Two, she was doing
Yeah.
something she enjoyed. Three, she was connecting and feeling connected to, other people in this life. And, you know, that was what it took for her to get up the stairs. And, I told her, keep that in your mind, that's part of your recovery. That's something that is meaningful to you and that lights you up, and that's going to help you keep progressing. Um,
Yeah, and I think that's why we hear so many different recovery stories having a slightly different focus or angle. Because for some people, like I'm thinking of um, one gentleman I interviewed where for him, finding community was pretty much his whole answer. Like he just needed to be connected. So if there's a specific part of your life that has really been starved, where you are really in your unhappiest state, of course, finding that peace and bringing it back in. Or for others of us, it might be a few pieces from all over that have kind of been taken, stripped away, and we need to bring back in. And which is why in the beginning, when I started interviewing people, it made me a little nervous. I'm like, oh, yes, I just needed to find community and I felt better again. And I'm like, oh, once again, this doesn't sound like a real answer to a real illness. But I'm so glad that, it's only been 5 years, but we've come so far and we understand this so much better and how important this is. And of course, that our brain and our mind and our body are all connected. It's all one thing. So of course, what's happening here affects how we feel here. And our brain and our nervous system don't speak English or whatever language we speak. So it uses all these symptoms to get our attention. And sometimes there's miscommunications. It's like, okay, I was trying to tell you something, but clearly you're not hearing me. So let me try and tell you another way. And all these symptoms come up and it can feel like your whole body's shutting down. Like, what is happening? Like, I must have reached some sort of point of no return. It's just like people get to such a hard place of people like, I've interviewed so many people that said they started planning for the end of their life. They're like, I must be dying. Like, I have so many symptoms. My body's just got to be completely shutting down. But the great thing is that from where I'm sitting, I haven't interviewed anyone who's been too far gone or been sick too long or had too many symptoms where there was no more hope for them because people still fully come back to life when they find all their puzzle pieces, just like you're saying.
yeah, I love that. It is, and it is all the puzzle pieces. And it looks so different for each person. I mean, there are so many similarities, but it'll be slightly different for everyone. The exact concoction, and that's why I think it's important to listen to other people's stories and gain insights from it. But ultimately, you know yourself best, and what really, you know what you were, like you said, struggling with in your life before you got sick on some deep level, the reason why you got sick. and you also know the things that really spark your joy and your creativity and that love for life. So it's really getting back to that. And
Yeah.
I think the beauty in it is it's not even just to apply to recovery, but for the rest of your life. That's how you're going to live a more meaningful and a really rich life if you live with that kind of love and intrigue and focus on living a good, meaningful, and a life that's exciting to you and in alignment with what you believe in. I think, that's a big lesson for all of us. In some way, we were out of alignment with what we really wanted from our lives. And I think for me, it was,
Absolutely.
I was focused too much on success and accomplishment, and I wasn't as much living my more playful and creative life that I think was always what I was meant. I think that was how I was always meant to live. But, we try and steer away from it because of what we feel society wants us to do.
So, what does life look like for you now? So, it sounds like you've had a career shift or expansion at least. And so, what are the differences, between where you were, March 2020 to how you're living today?
Yeah. So, physically, I'm not 100% recovered, and I'm okay with that. I'm doing great. I'm able to do a lot of the activities I've always loved to do, like rock climbing, skiing, running. I'm also able to work again, which is great, but I did take a different career path, and I think for a lot of us it's like we can't unlive this. It it was
Yeah.
meant to happen for me, and I think the reason for that is for me to then connect with and share a gift with the world that is a little bit different than the gift I was giving when I was a scientist, but very similar still. So at this time, in terms of my career, I'm still doing a lot of exploring in science and the science and math space, but I'm also what I call a creativity coach. And I'm working with different people, including people with chronic illness like long COVID and other autoimmune diseases, to help other people tap into this creative energy and, not only work towards recovery, but find a way to really still enjoy and appreciate their life, even in this trying time, because I think that's so important as well to just, life is not over. Even when you're sick, life isn't over. There's still joy to be had. And I think recovery often comes when we stop trying to chase it. So I work a lot with people on, yeah, finding the joy in daily life, but also, yeah, easing back into activity. How can they get back to walking, the activities they enjoy, cooking, cleaning, working, all the things that we all want to do but can't. And it's slow. It's a slow process, but I think giving them the tools to really start igniting that habitual creative thinking really sets them up to move in that direction. And then, one of my clients said, this is something I'm going to be able to apply to so many different aspects of my life, even outside of my illness. And I was like, yes, exactly. It's, this is the message. This is what long COVID was probably telling us in a really, really crappy
Mm.
way. But so yeah, and I now have a dream to like really put that message into the world, even beyond long COVID and chronic illness, to be creative and exploratory in life, because it can help a lot of people who maybe aren't even sick yet, who needed to hear that and feel like they can live a
Yeah.
life that feels aligned with them. They can get excited about life. It doesn't have to be survival, and it doesn't have to be, like work, for instance. It doesn't have to be survival. It doesn't have to be
Yeah.
boring or a chore. It can be fun. So it's turned into my message that I'm sharing with the world and my way to help people, including, yeah, people in the chronic illness community.
I absolutely love that. And I wish we could make things like this a part of preventative care in medicine. Like let's reach the people before they get to the state that you and I and so many other people got to. Because if we had had this understanding going in, it would have made a world of difference. And not only does this, yeah, it's helpful for life. I always say that life is CFS recovery on repeat for me. Not that it's hard and this big struggle, but you come out and life is still hard and there are still struggles. And all those tools and all those mindset shifts and all those ways of approaching things that served me working my way through CFS are what served me when I'm dealing with, difficult relationships or jobs or whatever life circumstances and how you approach them and not feeling trapped and it's just a thousand things. So yeah, it's unfortunate that we have to go through this nightmare because I know it is very difficult. But the good thing is that people come through it pretty much a very good version of themselves, more them than they were when they started. Yeah, this is amazing. I'm so glad that you have made so much progress. It's incredible that you're out there helping people. We'll make sure your information is linked in the video description. Just really appreciate you being here. Thank you so much, Leela. This has been incredible. Just wonderful having
Thank
you.
you so much for having me and also just for creating this channel. It's been really impactful and an incredible way of bringing this community together and helping because I it's difficult. A lot of people don't understand exactly what we're going through and what's going on. And I think you've really created a beautiful community with this channel and a lot of knowledge and wisdom to share and hope. I think that's the number one thing it's given is hope. So thank you. I really
Yeah,
appreciate what you're doing.
I appreciate you saying that. It's very kind. I'm grateful to all the brave people that come on here and share their stories and are just helping us to build this community because it's incredible. For decades, so many of us were going through this alone, and now we no longer have to. So, yeah, thanks again, Leela, and thanks to all of you watching. If you're looking for some extra support on your recovery journey, we'll put some resources up here on the screen for you to check out.